All right. Hey, well, welcome to another episode of Coach P's Perspective. Today I'm pumped, man. I have a phenomenal one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the nation, Coach Dustin Myers. And so I'll go through just a little bit of his bio here, and then I'll put the full thing in the show notes. But he's worked with Ohio State Wrestling for a long time at the RTC, the owner of Old School Gym. He is a part owner in Max Effort Muscle. And so if you are on social media, especially for me, I like Instagram, and it's funny. I was just watching some videos of coach training, but if you're on social media, you see like this guy who works with these elite athletes and shows all kinds of phenomenal strength conditioning programs, and then you hear him talk and you get to meet him a little bit, and he's the real deal, as genuine as can be. So, Coach Myers, man, thanks so much for being on here.
Hey, what's going on, Coach? How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. So I'm glad we got to connect up and do this interview for the podcast.
Yeah, man, I tell you, I'm excited to come on here and chop it up with you. But I think, and I know this isn't in the agenda for today, but I think what we really got to push out there next time, and what I think people want to see, is a breakdance battle.
I think so.
Yeah, two old school heads going at it to get some hip hop. We can maybe get a DJ here in the gym like we do for beats and barbells, and we got to do some straight up old school popping and locking, you know?
All right. So so anybody's just listening to this on podcast, if you go look at our social media, you can see a little TikTok on there. Now I saw Coach wearing the other day a face mask with a Woo on there, Wu-Tang. I'm a huge hip hop head, so love it, man.
Yeah, me too, man. And I'll tell you what, I like to mess around, do a little break dance, little old school moves. But after watching your TikTok the other day, I think I need to step it up and kind of get back into shape, so to speak. I've been out of the club for a long time, so.
Yeah, me too. My daughters got me doing TikTok, and then so getting on there and getting to do some dances again is fun. And it's funny because everybody just sees me as coach now, right? And then
right.
I put out there and everyone's like, dude, we didn't know you could dance like that. And I'm like, man, I've been dancing since I was a little kid. But so it's kind of fun.
Sometimes your athletes don't realize there's more to you than just the wrestling room or the weight room or whatever, Sometimes there'll be similar stuff with me, you're kind of the other end of the spectrum. Like I'm into gardening. I always grow tomatoes and peppers and stuff every year. And, maybe my guys will see that on my Instagram. They'll be like, oh, Coach, you like plants or you like the garden? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm not just a weightlifting guy. There's a lot more to me than just, lifting weights and wrestling and stuff like that. So I think it's good to really, even if your life revolves around wrestling or your life revolves around the weight room or whatever it is, you got to have other things that move you and other things that interest you and other things that you can, put your time and energy into, not just that one thing.
Absolutely. That overall life diversity and skill set diversity is huge. And that's a great example you're setting for your guys. So, well, let's kind of start here. So just so our audience knows, but give me a little bit of your background, growing up, where you're from, kind of how you got into sports, things like that.
Yeah. So I grew up right on the Ohio River, Eastern Ohio, Steubenville, Ohio, lived out in the country. And, the funny thing is I never played any sports growing up. I never once played Little League, never once, nothing. Never once, never had any interest in it. I was reading the books when I was little, but my dad, he was a really good athlete, he was a 3, sports star in high school or whatever. Then he got real big into lifting weights. Well, when I was growing up in the early 80s, he had in our like old detached unheated garage, he had some free weights out there. And he still helped, coach some, football at the local high school or whatever. And, back then he was 84, 85. There was no strength coaches. There was no personal trainers, nothing like that. So in the summertime, before football season would start, his high school kids would come to the gym at our house and work out with him. So there I was, 4, 5, 6 years old. I would hang out there while my dad would essentially train these guys, put them through little workouts or whatever. He had like the Arnold Encyclopedia weightlifting. They just followed like kind of basic bodybuilder workouts. So even though I wasn't into sports, I was really interested in weightlifting. But, my dad was just kind of like, and I don't think he really had the depth of knowledge to where he could have trained youth athletes or anything like that. But he would just tell me, oh, son, when you turn 12 or when you get hair under your arms, you can start lifting weights. And, so I was just always waiting to be a weightlifter. And, sure enough, I got to junior high. And I also, too, around that time, I was kind of one of those kids. I was the smallest kid in my grade every year, wasn't very athletic, wasn't very tall, wasn't very strong, nothing like that. And I remember thinking like, man, like this could change my life right here. I want to start lifting weights. So sure enough, 12, 13 years old, started with weightlifting first. That was really my first love. once I got, I got strong pretty quick. And once I got into high school, I think 10th grade, one of my best friends was a really good wrestler. And he kept talking. He was like, man, why are you not wrestling? Like, you love lifting, you're strong, blah, blah, blah. He's like, come out for the wrestling team. So that's how I got into wrestling right there. So kind of a late starter. But that was my background. It's kind of how I got into weightlifting. And then just kind of, stayed with it even in college. We didn't, go join like, Gold's Gym or anything like that. We put some rusty old weights in the basement of our house when we lived at Ohio State. And, that was just kind of how it started.
It's interesting to hear. And it's awesome because then we haven't even talked about this, but I also have a background in strength and conditioning and working out. So growing up, my dad he's a Hall of Fame wrestling coach. He's a big wrestling coach, but was also into he was big into lifting, sort of natural bodybuilding. And so when I was, I think 5, I had to do 100 push-ups a day, and I still do it. But
nice.
So it didn't have to be 100 at once. When I tell people that, like, what, like, throughout the day, whatever, I had to do 100, right. And I did it. And started lifting when I was probably about 9, what I thought was lifting. I mean, I was carrying around probably like 5 or 10 pound dumbbells and just doing like whatever my dad did.
Yeah, you were at least playing around with it at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I got older, I got to start lifting harder and really got into it and loved it. It's a passion. Now, I want to, before we move on to some of the other things in your life, I know that you kind of pride yourself on being old school and blue collar work ethic, knowing your dad's background, blue collar work ethic. My dad was the same way. And we did a lot. I mean, like, we literally would wake up, I'd lift weights like 6 a.m, eat breakfast, and then I worked till dark. I cut grass and painted houses all summer long, landscaped. It gives you a different kind of strength. Tell me a little bit about like the blue collar work ethic mindset that you have.
Yeah. So I think, growing up in a household like I did, my dad was a steel worker. My mom was a nurse, the type of house that you grew up in, there's just kind of a different level of expectation, a different way that you view work. Like when I was growing up, my mom had a horse, so I would have to, shovel the horse shit out of the stalls and carry the bales of hay. And, I'd have to cut the grass in the summer. I took out the garbage. And the funny thing is, I remember now looking back on it, I think it was the best thing ever for me. So even before I was lifting weights, I was doing all these physical things. But at the time, I remember hating it. I can remember, shoveling the horse's barn, and like my lower back just burning so bad. And I remember thinking, like, this is torture, But little did I know that was really kind of nurturing a work ethic that would serve me well later in life. And then just when you're used to doing hard things on a daily basis, then the other things you have to go through, whether it's in the wrestling room or in the weight room or when you get out into the business world or whatever it is, they don't seem that difficult because you're used to doing physical things and also doing things that are difficult when you don't feel like doing them, It's one thing to say, all right, I have football practice every day at 5 and I know I'm going to have to go and run. And it's like, that's your scheduled time of the day where you're going to have to do something difficult. But when you kind of grow up in a blue collar household and just kind of have that mindset, you're used to it's just part of everyday life. You do what has to be done. You don't complain about it. It just, it doesn't matter if your thumb hurts or you got a sniffly nose or whatever. Just the work needs done, you do it, and it is what it is. So that's just kind of what I would call a blue collar mindset. And my partner that I own the gym with here, Corey G. We were best friends and lifting partners from high school on. He's the same way. He grew up, was raised by a single mom, and he actually stayed home a year after I left after high school to, work in a coal mine and save up money, for college. And, so we both come from that same, that same type of background and, kind of grew up the same way. And with our gym, when we first, he opened a training studio first. And I can remember, it was a small personal training studio, and we kind of tried to like cater to everyone. We're like, all right, we're gonna have this personal training studio. We'll try to make it nice. We don't have like a water fountain, so we'll put a Brita pitcher out, and maybe we'll put, some flowers on the desk. And it was like, we were trying to put a Band-Aid on a pig or something. It just didn't really fit, and it didn't really fit with us because we would have the pop music on the radio for everyone, so no one would get mad. But then when they would leave, we'd work out in the middle of the day. We'd throw on Wu-Tang, and we'd have our shoes off while we're lifting weights or whatever. And when the time came for us to open our own gym, the original old school gym, it was in this old building called Amazing Fitness. It was a total dump. And I can remember like walking in and thinking, there's no way that we can fake it and try to make this place nice. Like, we need to just embrace who we are and people are either going to be drawn to it or they're not. And they're like, you know what, this is old school. This is where we're from. This is who we are. Let's call it the old school gym. And it's not going to be for everyone, but this was like, when was it been, like 2003, fitness was really big, and personal training is getting really big, and all the big gyms were just getting bigger and flashier, and every gym has a smoothie bar, and you can get your nails painted in between your sets and all this other bullshit that don't matter, right? And we're like, there gotta be other people out there that, miss training the way that we trained growing up, or if they've never experienced that, they don't understand how much more it can help them. And sure enough, once we opened the gym and kind of stayed true to our roots and just kind of let people know up front, like, hey, this is, the weights are rusty. There's going to be dirt on the floor. There's going to be cuss words in the rap music. It is what it is. This is the environment that we're going to train in. And people were really drawn to it. And I think, I've never had a wrestler walk into old school and not love it right off the bat, just because of the wrestler's mentality anyway. But I think, if you went down and polled all of our members, whether they're wrestlers or not, and whether they're 20 years old or 50 years old, and you asked them what they liked about our gym, almost every one of them would say, oh, you know what, this reminds me of my high school weight room where I fell in love with weightlifting. Or this reminds me of my buddy's basement growing up. His dad had a little bench and a heavy bag down there, and that's where I first learned to lift weights. There's almost a nostalgia to it, because it takes you back to where you first learned, to love the grind of it. It wasn't at some big fancy gym. It wasn't at an LA Fitness. It was it was when your dad was waking you up at 6 a.m. and making you lift before you went out to work for the day or whatever, So that's kind of what, that blue collar mindset, and how it's kind of, transformed. I shouldn't say transformed, how it's kind of helped us shape our brand and our gym and what we're about here.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. That's my favorite kind of training environment right there. Just raw and gritty. And I also love that you guys were just being authentic. I think that people embrace that, right? So when they see the authenticity, they see like, hey, these guys aren't putting on a show. Like, this is them, this is their background. And that allows people to really buy into what you're doing, and it makes them comfortable in the environment. So now, so you went to Ohio State. How did you transition into, strength conditioning with Ohio State, the regional training center, working with these just absolutely elite athletes?
Yeah. So I would say, like, in the early days of old school gym, the early days of my personal training career, I was very kind of like training like general population, people for weight loss. At the time I was doing natural bodybuilding shows, so I would train people for that and stuff. But because I had wrestled in high school and had a background in wrestling, I felt like even then I had, obviously not compared to what I know now, but even at that time, I kind of had a better understanding of the strength demands, and the energy demands for the sport. So I started kind of gravitating towards like, training high school wrestlers here locally and stuff like that. And I started kind of getting maybe just a little reputation locally, among the high schools of like, oh, well, this guy knows how to train wrestlers or whatever. And, I would have, my high school groups, and, maybe 2010, I ended up meeting Tommy Rollins through a mutual business contact. And now, being an old school guy, you remember the name Tommy Rollins. He was a legend here in Ohio, two-time national champ at Ohio State, four-time All-American. He was the man, and he was only a couple years younger than me. So even when I was at Ohio State, even at that time, I was, just a regular college student, partying and lifting weights or whatever. But I was out of the wrestling world, but I still went to a couple dual meets to watch him and stuff, because he was kind of like, he was like a larger than life figure here in Ohio wrestling. But anyway, I met him, and at that time he was 2 years retired from the sport. He had been runner-up in 2008, and we just started bullshitting. And he said, "Hey man, like, I'm thinking about making a comeback to try to make the team in 2012. He's like, but I've been on the couch for 2 years. He was like, I'm a dad now. I'm in the business world. I haven't worked out. I haven't done anything. And Tommy was one of those guys that he was an elite athlete, a freak athlete. He could work as hard as anyone, but he had never really gotten into the strength part of it. He did whatever his coaches told him, but he wasn't like you or I, guys that really loved the weight lift or whatever. He did it because he had to. So he didn't really understand any of it and didn't really have the knowledge to do it on his own. He said, man, I just feel like if I'm going to make a comeback, it's going to have to be a much bigger focus than it was for me before. And I can remember this at this point, I've never worked with an elite athlete. Maybe my best athlete I ever had was a kid that qualified for the state tournament or something. And I thought, oh my God, like this is one of those opportunities. I saw the door open. I stuck my foot in. I said, Tommy, let me help you. And, so then he said, oh, okay, you would help me? I'm like, yeah, man, of course. Like, well, what do you charge? And I was like, no. Look, you drive the old school gym, I will help you. You tell me when you want to train, you show up, and we're going to get after it. And at that time, Tommy lived in Hilliard. We're on the far east side. He's on the far west side. He's about 45 minutes away. He started driving out here, 3 days a week. And I started, training him and actually working out with him. And at the time, I was just thinking like, oh, this is such a great opportunity for me to learn. This guy's a legend. I didn't really see it going anywhere. I didn't think that it would actually, lead to anything other than hopefully him making the Olympic team. So we worked together for 2 years. Tommy made a comeback, started competing internationally, dropped down to 97 kilos for the first time in his life, and ended up becoming runner-up at the trials in 2012. Lost a close one to Jake Varner, who then went on to win gold, which obviously made it even more heartbreaking. But I learned a lot working with him. Now looking back, I wish I knew everything I knew now, because I would have done a lot of things differently. But at the time, it was really just a learning experience, because it's one thing to take a 15-year-old kid who's on JV and be able to turn him into a starter on his team, or to take a kid who's 500 and get him to the state tournament. But how do you take a guy who's already world class and make him better? That's much more challenging, right? So regardless, we did really well. We had a great 2 years together, and then I just kind of thought that was the end of it. And then that September, a couple years after the Olympics had came and gone, or a couple of months, I should say, Tommy reached back out to me and he said, hey man, like I know, it didn't pan out, but I couldn't have been more ready. Thank you so much for, how you helped me. But we have some other guys down here at the regional training center. At that time, I'd only trained him here at Old School Gym. I'd never even set foot in the wrestling room at Ohio State before. He said, hey, man, I got some other guys down here. I got Humphrey, I got Escobedo, Keith Gavin, JD Bergman. He's like, these guys are all right on the cusp, and they need some guidance, man. They could really use your help. Would you be interested to come down and help them? And I thought, at the Ohio State wrestling room? Like, are you kidding me? Of course I will. And so then now I'm driving down there 3 days a week. I went down, met Coach Ryan, met Coach Roselli, who was the head coach of the RTC at the time. And they were basically just like, oh, yeah, you want to volunteer? You want to come down and help these guys? Sure. Knock yourself out. And so I started, driving down there 3 days a week. And I can remember at that point now, I could see like, all right, this could go somewhere. I know I can have an impact on these guys. I've already done it with one guy, and I know I can make a big impact. So I need to like block off half a day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday to go down. And remember my wife, she's a very concrete thinker. We're very different in that way. I remember she was kind of like, all right, you're wasting your time. You're like losing money by going down there. You could be training clients at your gym. You could be doing things to grow your gym. You're going down there to work out with these guys. I'm sure you're having fun or whatever, but like you're taking time away from your business. I was like, Joel, like you just got to trust me on this one. Like I know that there has to be some good that'll come out of it. If I can help put Humphrey on the world team again, if we can win the U.S. Open with these guys, this is not going to be just for nothing. I know it. So anyway, long story short, for about the first year and a half, it was on a volunteer basis. And Coach Ryan, started kind of taking notice of what we were doing. We put 5 guys on the world team that second year I was down there, which I think has never happened before or since. 5 guys from one regional training center to make it on the world team. And, so now Coach Ryan's saying, like, all right, I kind of like what this guy's doing. Me and him worked out a couple times, and I'm sure you've talked to Tom or heard him talk before, but he is just such a glutton for suffering. And, him and I really hit it off. And I should also state too, like not only was I training these guys, but every workout, no matter what they were doing, I would work out with them. Because being a guy who only worked out or only wrestled for 3 years in high school, I didn't have some great resume. I'm not an All-American walking in there. So I right off the bat, I felt like I got to find a way to earn their respect. And at that time, I was strong and in shape, but I wouldn't say I was at an elite level conditioning wise or anything like that. I have to really step it up. I have to be able to prove to them that I'm going to do whatever they're going to do. And so, I'm working out with them side by side. Me and Reese are battling like maniacs on these sprints and these lifts or whatever. And so then Tom would say like, all right, hey, this guy's redshirting, can you work with him? Or, hey, this guy's hurt, so he can't do our team lifts, but maybe you could do some stuff to, for his lower body since his shoulder's bothering him. And I'm like, sure, give me whoever you can give me. Whoever can fit in these RTC lifts, I'll take them all. And then kind of just one thing led to another. And before you know it, I was running the whole program. They started filtering all the team lifts through the RTC, and we did that through 2014 to 2018. So even though I was employed by the RTC, I was, the de facto strength coach for OSU. We ended up winning a team national title, 3 Big Ten titles. We had a really good run. I was lucky to really, work with some very elite athletes, the Stevers and Snyder and the Jordans and all those guys. And that was it, man. I've been there ever since.
And that's incredible. It's so cool how, one thing can happen and open a door. And of course, there's some people, oh yeah, it's a lucky break, whatever. Well, you saw an opportunity to help somebody, to pour into their life. You weren't even getting paid for it. And then you do your job really well, other doors open, right? So I always feel like your gifts make room for you, but you got to put the work in too.
Absolutely, man. If you total up those 2 years I spent with Tommy, and then the first year and a half, I was, going down there and training them as a volunteer, that's 3.5 years of 3 days a week consistently of, working with these guys. And it allowed me time to get better at my craft too. So it really benefited me as well. But most people, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people would have given up in that 3.5 years and thought, this just isn't worth it. The 45-minute commute each way is not worth it. The time I'm taking away from my family, my business is not worth it. But I think I had this vision. I knew that I could help. And I just thought nothing bad is going to come out of this. I got to pursue it. And if the worst thing that happens is it doesn't pan out and it doesn't get to where I know it can get, at least I'll, become better and help people in the process. So I get messages a lot, on Instagram from someone, that's in college, or maybe even a guy that's in high school says, oh, coach, I'd love to be a strength coach someday and do what you do. Do you have any advice for me? Or what certification should I take? Or what do I need to major in? And first thing I tell them is don't even worry about the certifications yet. My degree's in English, so don't worry about where your degree's in yet. You need to, number one, focus on leading by example. And number two is approach every relationship with how can I help this person? And if you try to focus every relationship, by putting your best foot forward and trying to help that person, then you're going to become successful by helping other people become successful. So that's it. It's so simple that it's complicated, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I love it, man. That's great advice for anyone listening. And then I'll also mention in here, if you are listening, maybe you're driving down the road or maybe you're out for a run, right now, whatever, go back, get a notepad, write these things down. So a lot of times I'll be working out, or while you're talking, I'll take notes, right? When I'm working out or out for a run, sometimes I'll hear something on a podcast and I hate stopping. When I'm lifting, I don't stop. But if I'm running or something, sometimes I got to stop and put notes in my phone because I don't want to just leave these great ideas to my memory because I'll forget.
Oh, it's so easy to forget.
Oh, absolutely. All right. So, moving on from the Ohio State thing, running your gym, and you're an entrepreneur. Okay. So that's kind of another side of who you are as a person. What are the things that you do? And you spoke about your gym earlier, but what are the things that you do to make sure you have a successful gym and to provide a great atmosphere for your people? Because a lot of good coaching is building relationships, right? It's getting to know your people, building relationships. So how do you do that as a gym owner / coach whenever you're in there with people?
Well, for the gym, we've been in business now for 17 years. And I think it's kind of the point now, the gym itself is on cruise control,
Yeah.
Early on, the gym was our main focus, and Corey and I both worked full-time as personal trainers. That was our only income. That was what we did all day. We were here sometimes from 5 a.m. till 9 p.m. every day. Now it's much different than that. I come in, kind of to train my athletes and get my workout in. That's kind of it, But I think as far as if I were to give advice to someone who wanted to, whether it's to have a training studio or gym or something like that, the biggest thing is you kind of have to establish what the culture of your gym is, what the values are that are important in your gym, and what people can expect when they come here. Because if you're just a room with equipment and there's no personality to it, there's no kind of overriding theme or feel to the place, then you're no different than any other gym, right? So people know when they come here, even if Corey and I are not here, they're going to feel like they worked out with us because of the type of equipment that we have, the type of environment it is, just kind of the things we expect out of our members. I don't know if I'm getting sidetracked on that or what, but it's just kind of one of those things where there has to be a certain culture to the place. Here, it's you work hard, you take responsibility, you clean up for yourself. you don't come here and just kind of float through your workout. I don't care whether you're a beginner, I don't care whether you're a 7th grade wrestler and this is your first year, or whether you're Colin Moore or Miles Martin. When you come in, you give 100% and you work hard. Yeah, there's a social aspect to it. Of course there is, and there should be. But that comes secondary. I enjoy everyone that comes in here. I talk to everyone the same. It doesn't matter who they are. I give everyone respect, but I expect them to come in and bust their ass. So even when I'm in here training my athletes, if I see someone that's doing something incorrectly, I go over and try to help them. Even if it's a guy in here that I barely know, like if I see them, they're in the lat pull down machine and they're not doing it right or whatever, I come on and say, hey man, let me show you there's a more effective way to do this. This is a mistake a lot of people make, and I try to make sure that I never talk down to anyone. I never come with this like, hey, you've seen I have a CSCS after my name and I train Olympic level athletes. No, I come to them like, hey, this is a mistake I used to make, but here's a better way to do it. So I think that's the biggest thing is just, our gym is a hardcore gym, but that doesn't mean that we're dickheads, It doesn't mean that we're confrontational, Like I said, I treat everyone the same, and as long as people come in here and try hard, I always say the effort is the only currency that buys respect in my gym. I don't care what your accolades are. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how big your muscles are. I could give a shit about that. I care about how hard you train, and that doesn't take anything special. There's no talent required for that. Anyone can be taught to work hard. I look at myself as a very average athlete, but I was taught to work hard at an early age, and that carried over into everything else.
Love it, man. Effort is currency. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, you can steal that one. I should put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Effort is the only currency that'll buy my respect.
Yep. Love it. So I wanted to bring that up because I'm glad you were talking about culture. I'm big on building culture, and I know Ohio State, they're known, right, for having this incredible culture. What are the things that the elite athletes that you've worked with, what are some of the things that they do outside of like the normal person that make them elite, right? And then those things together kind of build this whole culture. But what are some of the things that make them elite?
Well, when I think back, about the really elite guys that I've coached, now obviously anyone who makes it to Ohio State and wrestles for Ohio State is elite in some way. Everyone on there has a state title or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. But there's different levels, right? There's the guys that go on to become very successful. There's the Nathan Tomasellos, the Bo Jordans, Kyle Snyder, the Miles Martin. These guys, there's different levels. So the guys that I just mentioned that have had that tremendous success, because you see it all the time. You see guys that make it to college and don't pan out, right?
Yeah.
That may have, they come out of high school and they're, ranked in the top 5 in the country, and, they're all over flow already at a young age and stuff, and you think they're going to be the next big thing, and then for whatever reason they fizzle out. The guys, that don't do that, the guys that continue to improve and become the greats that everyone knows, is they're almost, it's like it's their job. They're professionals. They take they don't miss practice. They get there early. They do everything they're supposed to. They do their prehab they're supposed to do on their own to prevent injury. They know what meals they're eating the next day. They know what time they're eating. They know what time they're supposed to go to bed. They don't stay up till 4 a.m. playing Xbox every day. They don't go out on the weekends during the season when they're not supposed to go out. They treat it the same way that you or I treat our job or treat our marriage or treat raising our kids. They take it very serious. They're consistent. They give intensity every day in the room. They don't take days off when they're not feeling good or when they're fighting with their girlfriend or whatever. They minimize distractions. It's a very professional approach to an amateur sport. So when I think of, Nathan Tomasello, from the moment he set foot on campus as a redshirt freshman, it was his job. He had laser focus. Bo Jordan, laser focus. Colin Moore, laser focus. So that's the difference maker. And I think you would probably find that across the board, whether we're talking about entrepreneurs or business or any sport, anything. The people that are successful are consistent and they take it very serious. There's no off days. There's no missing days. There's no making excuses. They hold themselves to the high standard, and there really is no other way. It's just that's the way things are.
Yeah, it seems like, the more people I interview, the more high-level athletes I work with and train, it's at the highest levels, it's lifestyle versus lifestyle.
For sure.
And all those things that you mentioned create that lifestyle. So, all right, now kind of moving to the next thing. We were talking about effort a minute ago. You got on your right now, if anybody ends up watching this video, but you have on your Max Effort shirt, you're part owner in Max Effort Muscle. Tell us about that, how you got into it, and kind of the overall vision of Max Effort.
All right, so my partner that I own the gym with, Corey G. For any of you guys listening, that he's not in the wrestling world, but I recommend for any of you guys listening to give him a follow on Instagram, Corey G Fitness. He has an incredible account on there. But so we've grown up lifting together forever, and he's kind of been a serial entrepreneur in addition to the gym. He started in, I guess it may be 2007 or 2008. He was one of the founders of Muscle Farm, which at one time was one of the biggest supplement companies on the planet. They were one of the early sponsors of the UFC. And, I did some content work for them. They used to have the gut check workout of the week. Those were or workout of the day. They had Jordan Burroughs on there and Reese Humphrey, and those were my workouts or whatever. So I did some work for them, but I wasn't involved with the day-to-day runnings of the company or anything like that. But so Muscle Farm got really huge. At one time, they had Tiger Woods. They had a line with Arnold. They had all this stuff. But once a company becomes publicly traded and it becomes so big, a lot of times the founders have no control over what's going on anymore. And maybe their original vision for the company does not align with the board of directors. And now you're like, man, I'm like a stranger in my own house. So that's kind of where, Corey got to that point in maybe, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2014 or 2015. And he was like, D, I'm walking away from Muscle Farm. And he had like maybe a year and a half non-compete. But he said, when this is up, he said, we're going to start a supplement company, but we're going to do everything right and change the things that I did or that the company did wrong with this other company that I had. He said, we're going to keep it small. We're going to keep our arms around it. We're going to do direct to consumer so we don't have to deal with, the big box stores and have to deal with all the headaches of jumping through these hoops. We're going to, not just provide people with supplements, but we're going to provide them with the training, with the mindset. We're going to really just try to help them like we do in our gym and everything else, and kind of bring them in as part of the family so that way, they don't have to live here in Columbus, Ohio to train with us and to do what we're doing. They can be across the world and still be a part of the Max Effort family. So that was kind of his vision for it. And then it was him and John Fosco, which was an MMA manager that he did a lot of business with, another kind of serial entrepreneur, myself, and then Clay Guida and Travis Brown, who were two, well-known UFC fighters that John had managed. So we brought them in as well. And we launched in, I think, 2006, I think it's 2016. So we've been in business for 4 years now. And we kind of have a unique model. The only place that you can get Max Effort Muscle is from our website. And we do, structure our deals around, if you buy three things, it's a stack. You get a free t-shirt or a free hoodie or something like that. So we do a lot of gear giveaways and stuff like that. And that's it, man. We've been grinding it out. We have a really loyal, customer base, and we're really thankful for everyone that supports us.
That's awesome. So I'm a nutrition freak, and I think people that work out, kind of goes along with it. And I love supplements. I'm a big supplement guy. My dad was a supplement guy way back in the day before a lot of people even were, right? And it's just funny, as you're talking, I'm thinking like these old school things. Like I had pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu and Flex Wheeler on my wall and all this stuff. But so what are the reasons that people use nutritional supplements? There's there's a million companies out there. There's different ideas and thought processes behind it. Again, I'm a big believer personally.
Right.
But what are some of the reasons that people should be using nutritional supplements?
Well, the first thing that I always say, and you got to remember, this is coming from a guy who owns a supplement company. Yeah. You have to remember that supplements are supplemental to your nutrition. And I always tell people, I wholeheartedly believe in our product line. We use the highest quality ingredients. Our formulas are designed to help the athletes, and they will help you. But if your diet is crap, and if your training is crap, then they're not going to help you. Nothing will. So this idea that there's a magic pill out there, it just does not exist, So, but if you want to be the next Tomasello or Steve or Bo Jordan, these guys that I talked about, and you have to look at all right, if I'm treating my training as a professional, then I have to make sure my nutrition is in line. And then what do I need to do to supplement on top of that to make sure I'm recovering properly so that I'm able to, build muscle in the off season, so that I'm able to maintain my muscle mass, in season, to make sure that I'm getting the right nutrients to recover directly after my workouts and things like that. So it will give you an edge on top of, if you're already doing everything right, it's going to give you an edge and help you recover better, help keep you healthier so you don't get sick as often, you can train harder. and really just, you know, over time, you're going to be much further ahead. You know, if you get our full, you know, supplement line and you forget to take them and you take it once a week, then yeah, it's not going to help you. You got to be consistent with your supplement intake and have it in line with your nutrition, your training, just like anything else.
Yeah. I think kind of like underlying principles are principles. They apply everywhere.
Right.
You know them, you know, and yeah, consistency is so huge. So people and I tell people this all the time, I'm like, okay, ideally in an ideal world, you would have a phenomenal workout written up and you'd be able to follow that. But I'm like, let's just say that you never really worked out and you had a terrible workout plan, but you went in and you did it consistently 3 or 4 days a week. You're probably still going to get stronger and in better shape.
Absolutely.
If you started eating better, let's say that, you know, you eat clean 40% of the time and all of a sudden now you're eating clean 70 to 80% of the time and just doing that consistently, you're going to improve, right? Now, if you do it at even higher levels consistently over time. So yeah, with nutrition, just our regular eating and then our supplementation, same thing, man, doing that consistently, adding on top, like you said, it's just supplementing. It's not replacing everything, but it's so huge into overall progress, and there's no way to microwave it. And it comes back to that old school blue collar mentality, right?
Right. No doubt, man. I think you made several good points there. And I think, you know, maybe a good takeaway for your listeners right now is that, you know, if you're starting here, whether we're talking about training, nutrition, or whatever, maybe you're coming off the couch, you haven't been working out, you're trying to get back into shape. I think a lot of people maybe self-sabotage. They think, well, if I can't, you know, train with the best training plan and, you know, train twice a day and do this and that, then I might as well it's not even worth it. If you can just improve a little bit each day, you know, if you can start eating a little bit better, like, all right, say tomorrow I'm not going to drink any beer at night. And then the next day it's, all right, maybe, you know, this weekend I'm not going to have any pizza, or, you know, tomorrow I'm going to make sure I eat breakfast or whatever it is, you know, just keep gradually improving. You know, if your strength plan, like if you have the best strength plan in the world, which I consider mine to be, then yes, that's great. But even if you start working out, doing something, I don't care what it is. If you're a kid that don't have access to any weights, but you're doing 100 push-ups and 100 squats and some planks every day, then yes, you're going to improve. You just have to do it consistently. So anything will help. Any type of change is good. You just got to keep gradually improving and getting closer and closer to that elite level where you're doing everything right.
Yeah. Well, it kind of brings me to my next question. It's a good transition there. I like to look at high performers and see what they do that makes them high performers. So what is a day in the life of Coach Myers look like as far as like success habits, morning routines? I mean, just run us through a day.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wish I had something real sexy to tell you. Like I wake up and, you know, meditate for 45 minutes and then do this and do that. But I don't have this huge set, you know, morning routine. I try to get up early. My big thing is I like to get up before it's light out. So I'm not, you know, like one of those maniacs that gets up at 3:30 or anything like that. But I usually get up around like 5:30. Usually take about an hour to get ready to leave the house. Again, I'm not someone that can just like jump in the car and go. Like to have a couple cups of coffee. Maybe I'll, you know, kind of return some emails or do some, return some messages on social media or whatever, kind of get some of that little like busy work out of the way. And then I usually come into the gym, and whether it's if I have, you know, what a regular client or one of my elite guys out here, I get kind of my first workout in the day. You know, I like to do that before I really do anything else. If I would try to sit down and, like, let's say do a block of like computer work for 4 hours before my first workout, I would be so inefficient. So it's like I have to get that first workout out of the way, and I prefer to do my conditioning first, because I think like there's something about really challenging yourself from a conditioning standpoint early, then the rest of the day kind of feels easy. So I get up, have some coffee, get to the gym, or if it's a day where I'm not coming in the gym, you know, I'll get a hard run in or a hard bike or something at home. After that, I'll have my first meal, you know, some eggs, some avocado, you know, something real healthy early on. Usually at that point, either whether, you know, I'm here at the gym or if I got to go down to the RTC at Ohio State, you know, I'll train my elite guys, maybe film some content in the afternoon. Right now, you know, because my high school kids are back in school, so, you know, in the evenings I have my high school groups, and then I go home, cook dinner, spend some time with the kids, and, you know, do it all over the next day. So really, other than the time I spend with my family, the majority of my day revolves around, you know, fitness in some respect, whether it's creating content, you know, whether it's training the athletes, whether it's, you know, doing, scheduling emails or whatever. So the bulk of my day focuses, kind of revolves around the gym, so to speak, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm always in the gym. So
you wake up at 5:30. Are you a night owl, or do you go to bed early?
I try to go to bed pretty early. I try to be in bed by 10 or 10:30. Ideally, if I can get 7 hours of sleep, I feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Anything less than that, I'm going to drag a little bit. Anything more than that kind of feels like too much. So yeah, I'm not someone that likes to. In general, I'm the first one to sleep in my house. My kids are night owls. They do not like to go to bed. So, I have one of those sound machines that gives me like white noise so I don't hear them, because even at like 10:30, I'm trying to go to bed. They're still like bouncing off the walls. So it's usually then, my wife will finish putting them to bed, and then, she'll come to bed and I'm already knocked out.
Yeah. So I'm about a 7-hour guy too, but my wife, she falls asleep. I never watched TV before I went to bed, ever, ever, ever. And my wife's one of those people that literally likes to put something on the TV to fall asleep.
Right.
And so a couple years ago, she got me watching some series or something. And now I'll get into bed and she'll turn on her series, and 5 minutes later she's out. And now I'm hooked, watching this show. What am I doing? I got to go to bed. So, but yeah, go ahead.
I'd say that's probably a bad habit to get into. Once you're into it, it's hard to get out because it seems so harmless, So it's
absolutely,
why get out of it?
So I like hearing people's, like I said, these success habits that they have during the day. And some people are super rigid, some aren't. All high performers are able to focus, right? They're able to focus when they need to focus, and then have times where they can chill or relax a little bit, or like you said, spend time with family, things like that. What are some of the things that you do for relaxation or as a hobby or fun?
Well, again, I like to be active. So the things I like to do for, quote unquote relaxation is me and the kids will go for a bike ride, or we'll take them somewhere and go hiking, or things that are very therapeutic for me are landscaping or chopping firewood, things I've kind of done my whole life. So I'm not a big, watch football type of guy. I like football, but to spend a whole Saturday on the couch watching football, I have no interest in that whatsoever. Mm. So I still like to do active things. We talked about culture in the gym earlier, or, I'm sure you talk a lot about culture in the wrestling room, but we have a culture in my house of being very active. My kids, now I would say it's maybe a little bit worse because they're home all day, because they're doing the kind of remote learning right now during the quarantine. But in general, we're outside a lot. We're always doing stuff. We're always, whether it's going for family walk, family run, family bike ride, or on the weekend we go hiking or something. We're always doing something active. So I just like I said before, I guess the only real very constant to my morning routine is I have to get that first workout in before I really do anything. I have my coffee, and then I have to have that kind of suffering aspect of my day before I can mentally move on and really get a lot of work done. But yeah, for relaxation, it's, something active and something outside.
Yeah, I like hearing that. I'm the same way. I like disc golf. I don't play a lot anymore. I used to play some, but what do you do for a hobby? I'm I work out. That's fun. I literally like to do, like you said, hard things, work out. But our kids, we like to do the same. My wife was a college athlete, and she's a coach. And so, we try to be outside as much as we can, keep the kids off the TV or their devices, moving around, playing, having some fun, doing this type of activities. I think it's a great example. And it's something that as a teacher, I see so much that we don't have anymore, that we need in society. So many kids are, especially during this quarantine, locked in their house, and they're on their computer, on their devices. They're not moving a lot, right? And
right.
So get them in class, and I see that. I see that they're not moving a lot. So it's great to have that example. And how good does it make your body and your mind feel? How good is it for your mind to be outside and doing those things, right? Going for a hike, dude, there's not many more things that are more refreshing just for every part of your being than that.
And there's almost a feeling of relief that comes with it. The stress of everyday life, the stress of running a business, the stress of working or whatever. I just feel when you're outside, you're doing something. Like I said, even if I'm gardening or messing with my landscaping or moving rocks or chopping firewood, hiking, any of that stuff, it just feels I don't know, that's the only time other than when I'm training hard where my mind just feels freed from the stress of everyday life. So it is, it's something that's very important to me in my life that I need on a daily basis. You talked about devices and trying to keep your kids off the devices. Man, what a struggle, right? Like my kids, like they want to be on their iPad or whatever it is they have all the time. And I've already kind of laid down the law in our house and said, my kids are not going to have cell phones until they're 16. And they think I'm the meanest dad ever. And even my wife is kind of fighting me on it. But I said, look, this is just one of those things I'm taking a stand on. Hey, I get the whole argument of like, well, what if they need to call home? Well, hey, every other kid out there has an iPhone. Like they can use their friend's phone if they need to call home. I survived without a cell phone. Cell phones didn't exist when we were young. You probably didn't have a cell phone growing up. Their kids will be just fine. So when they're 16 and when they're driving, then they'll get their first phone. And guess what? If their friends think they're the biggest nerds ever, I really don't care, because I know that I'm on my phone way too much because my business revolves around it.
Yeah.
But I feel like my brain's already kind of wired a certain way. Their brain's still developing. I want them off that phone as much as possible when they're young. And in some ways, it's kind of a losing battle, but I'm going to do my best.
Yeah, no, I think it's great advice. Great advice. So you're really good at a lot of different things. In my mind, and I don't know if you're artistic, I don't know if you're musical, any of those things, but I know that you're creative because I watch your content and I see all the different areas that you excel. Is there a time for you that you have your best creative thoughts where you come up with this business idea or something like that? Is it when you're out there working, or is it working out? Is it in the shower? I mean, like, when does inspiration strike you the most? And you kind of know, like, I can take advantage of this time for those thoughts.
Well, first of all, thank you. It might be kind of a stretch to say I'm really good at everything, but I do appreciate that. But I think as far as, being creative from a training standpoint, I think I come up, with a lot of whether it's the accessory movements or the type of content, I think I get the most inspiration when I'm actually training myself. I think I feel less creative when I'm training other people, but I think that's part of why I'm able to create so well when I'm training my elite guys, because I train side by side with them. So I'm very intuitive with my body. I mean, I've been doing this for so long that I know how something affects me, or what certain movements, like what is working, or what I feel like needs to be different or whatever. So I think from a training and content standpoint, I get most creative when I'm actually training, but as far as from a business standpoint, I think like when I'm talking to other, whether it's when I'm talking to other business owners or other entrepreneurs or my business partners, Corey G, who I talked about, Annette Grant, another business partner of mine, anytime that we're sitting down, whether it's over coffee or you're having a bite to eat and we're kind of talking about things, that's when I feel kind of creative from a business standpoint, because it can get easy when you're running a business and when you're in the midst of it, just you're focused on doing something. It's kind of hard to think outside of, just, hey, we have to do this, this, and that to kind of keep things moving. It's hard to think about what do we need to do differently, or what do we need to do in addition to what we're already doing, because you're focused on running what needs to be ran. So I think anytime I sit down with my business partners, we're able to talk. A lot of times I leave those meetings and think like, why the hell didn't I think of this a month ago or 2 months ago? But it's because we didn't kind of devote that time to really kind of freestyling and thinking about where we need to go to move forward.
Yeah, that's, iron sharpens iron. This is Coach P's perspective. And a big part of that is I believe in looking at various perspectives. And, whenever you have an iron sharpens iron group. So if you're training with somebody, like you said, you're side by side with your elite athletes, that's iron sharpening iron right there. Whenever you have your business partners and you guys are sitting down and you're thinking through things or just talking about things, you hear different perspectives and it brings up different ideas. I've been around wrestling so long, and I've been real blessed to just have some amazing coaches. So it's very rare that I see something that I've never seen, right? There, in some shape, form, or fashion, I've seen that setup or that finish or that shot or whatever. And I remember like watching Ben Askren and watching some of his, matches and technique videos and hearing him explain things and like being like, dude, I've wrestled my entire life. Why did I not think about finishing it that way?
Right.
Like, you just simplified the process by 3 steps, So it's so cool whenever you can hear somebody else's perspective or see somebody, and then it brings up that thought like, why wasn't I doing this the whole time? Or why didn't, but you only know what you know. And sometimes we have blinders on whenever you're running at something.
Right.
So it's so important to hear that outside. Now I want to kind of finish this up by what I call putting you on the hot seat.
Okay? Uh-oh, the hot seat. All right.
Yeah. It's not real hot, but I'm just going to give you complete freedom here. I want you to tell me, you have 3 categories and you get to pick one. Tell me about either a hero, a highlight, or a heartbreak in your life. Okay. A hero, highlight, or heartbreak, and expound upon it. Like why does this thing stick out to you and what did you learn from it or from them? A hero, a highlight, or a heartbreak?
All right. So let's see. Now, I think I'm going to pick heartbreak. And this may not sound like your typical heartbreak because it's not like a divorce or, loss of a parent or something like that. I feel like I've been very fortunate in that in certain ways I've lived a very good and uneventful life in certain ways. But if I think about heartbreak, the closest I can kind of think that can kind of come up to mind, and the reason I want to talk, and I'll get to the reason why I want to talk about this, because I think there's a good lesson here. I think about when my grandfather died in 2005. This is my mom's father. I was really close to him when I was young. When probably about 10 years prior to him passing away, he had a stroke, and it was a massive stroke, but he survived. But he was different after that, so he was very quiet. So even growing up, my mom and everyone on her side of the family always said, "Oh, you act just like Jack. The way you talk or the way you tell stories or this or that." So he was kind of like one of those guys that people were very drawn to him. Well, then once he had a stroke, he was then very quiet and very reserved. And so I remember, feeling that my relationship was different with him after that. I didn't really know how to relate to him. Well, then he passed away unexpectedly about 10 years after that, passed away in his sleep. And it was a very big, he was kind of the center of, my mom's side of the family. He was kind of like the rock in the middle of the family there that everyone kind of revolved around. And it was one of those things where it was very heartbreaking because no one got to say goodbye to him. No one expected him to pass away. Just, my grandmother, Jane, found him the next morning. And, thankful, obviously, that he didn't have any pain or suffering or anything like that. But still, when you're left behind like that, it can feel very heartbreaking because there's no closure to it. And the reason I want to talk about this, because at that time I was very young in my business career. We'd had my gym open for about 2 years. And I would say, I was good at training. I was good at weightlifting. I was good at, kind of the one-on-one part of the personal training. But I don't think I was very good as an entrepreneur. And part of it was I didn't have the confidence to maybe talk in front of people, to be able to convey what I know. I could convey it to me and you if we're in the weight room. But if I had to go in front of a high school and explain to them how I could help their team, or to, speak at the Ohio State Coaches Convention to all these high school coaches, there's no way I could do that. I didn't have the confidence. I remember that I joined a marketing group. It was kind of like it was a group that would meet of local business owners where they would come and try to give each other leads, and you'd meet once a week for coffee. And, and every week, and this is right around the same time, every week you would go around the table and you had to introduce yourself because there's anyone new there and talk about your business. And these guys sometimes would bring them on for 5 or 10 minutes. And I was just like, "Oh, my name's Dustin Myers. I have the old school gym, a great referral for me. Is anyone that wants to learn how to work out?" And, and that's really about all I would say because I just was not confident in explaining how I could help someone. And so I think that was something that really hindered me. So anyway, just to kind of tell you where I was at in my business, in my life, kind of business-wise, I had no problem, telling the funny story at the party, but I did not have the confidence for public speaking. I never raised my hand in class in college and that type of thing. Well, anyway, when my grandfather passed away, one of my first immediate thoughts was, I want to give the eulogy. I want to tell the story about how our relationship changed and, kind of the things that, the way I felt about him as I got older. And so in my head, I kind of started writing this eulogy. And I don't even think I ever wrote it down on paper, but, over the couple of days that we spent as a family grieving at the funeral home before the actual funeral, for the viewings and stuff like that, I was writing this eulogy in my head. And I remember then the day of the funeral, they said, "All right, does anyone from the family want to speak?" And I just stood up and I walked up and I gave this eulogy. It was long. It was very heartfelt. And my mom, my grandmother, everyone's crying. And just from a grieving standpoint, after that, I remember I felt this enormous weight off my back. I felt closure, from the fact that I didn't get to say goodbye to my grandfather, but I got to give him this tribute at his funeral. I would kind of tell you, some of the actual speech, but I feel like I'll cry if I'll tell it now. So that might have to be for another one. But the thing that changed in me after that was my fear or kind of reluctance to speak in public, it was gone. I no longer felt embarrassed to talk in front of people, or felt like I couldn't, explain to people how I could help them, or talk in front of coaches or anything like that, because now I'd done, probably up to that point, one of the hardest things I ever had to do was to get up in this moment of grieving, in this moment of heartbreak, to look around at, this room full of 100 people, of all my relatives I've known my whole life, and pour my heart out in front of them and give this great man who had an impact on so many, a worthy tribute. So if I could do that, then what is it to talk in front of 100 high school kids, or to talk in front of a room full of coaches, or to talk into my phone on Instagram and explain a workout? Like that now is nothing, So I think the lesson here is that sometimes you have to, the way to overcome a fear, and you may not even, I never looked at it at that time as that was what was going to come out of it. But I think sometimes you have to go through something almost traumatic to then not be afraid of this, whatever it is. So I preach this a lot in my training as well. If you can go to the dark place on the treadmill, or on the trail when we run, or on the track, it becomes much easier to confront that feeling of fatigue when you're on the wrestling mat, or when you're in the boxing ring and someone's beating you up. You're not scared to go there because you've went there on so many occasions. So I know I'm kind of rambling on this one, but
this is great.
I think that was kind of a moment of heartbreak for me, where I can feel like something positive came out of it, and I was able to, kind of change something that needed to change about myself, and something that's been able to impact my career indirectly. So, Pap, I appreciate that opportunity that you didn't know you were giving me, but it was there.
Yeah, it's so hard for us. I mean, none of us, I don't wish adversity on anybody, hard times on anybody, but it's amazing how many people you talk to that went through something difficult and then got something great out of it, right? But going back to sort of the principle that you were talking about, do hard things, right? Whenever we have to do hard things, and when we've done it a lot of times, it gives you confidence to do many other things, right? Because this over here doesn't look that difficult anymore, because you've already been, like you said, you've been to that dark place. You've had to embrace or encounter your fears. So that's a phenomenal lesson. I don't want to expand on that anymore, or expound upon that anymore, because let's get ready to end with that. That was excellent.
Thanks, man. Well, that's actually the first time I've ever told anything about that story, like in a setting like this. So I'm glad that you brought it up, because it felt good to talk about it.
Excellent. Well, Coach, thank you so much for taking the time and getting on here, sharing with us a little bit about your life story and these principles that have allowed you to succeed, train some of the highest level people in the world. Now, where can we find you, and where can we follow you online?
All right. So the easiest kind of low hanging fruit. You want to find me, you want to see what I do every day, follow my Instagram account at Coach Myers_gut-check. If you want to check out my website, go to oldschoolgym.com. You can find all my training programs on there, all my ebooks, all that stuff. That's probably the two easiest ways. I got a Facebook page too. I think it might also be Coach Myers. It's either just Coach Myers or Coach Myers Gut Check. So Facebook's your thing. Check for me on there. But I put out, try to keep it positive. I put out, content that's going to help you and help your athletes every day. And that's really it, man. Just try to be authentic, and just try to show you who I am and what I do.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that I put those links in the show notes so people can do that and they can connect with you, follow you, and be inspired by your journey. I know it inspires me. I love following you online. So again, Coach, thanks for taking the time, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. That was fun.
Bet. So, all right, y'all, this has been another episode of Coach P's Perspective. May God bless you, shine his face upon you. Until next time, peace.